The August 31st deadline to evacuate all remaining Americans from Afghanistan could still be moved.
I've asked the Pentagon and the State Department for contingency plans to adjust the timetable should that become necessary.
President Biden making that announcement Tuesday after what was a brief virtual meeting with the other leaders of the G7. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson says there are some expectations for the Taliban.
The number one condition we're setting as G7 is that they've got to guarantee right the way through August the 31st and beyond, safe passage for those who want to come out.
The U.S. Defense Department still not giving an estimate on how many Americans have been evacuated to date.
I think I'm just going to leave it at several thousand right now, Dave.
Well, then tell us why.
Because I think the number is very fluid, and it literally changes nearly by the hour.
It's not more fluid than these 11,000, 37,000.
I'm going to leave it at several thousand right now.
There are widespread international concerns of Taliban reprisals against Americans and anyone else who has assisted the U.S.-led coalition in Afghanistan over the past 2 decades. The vice president in Southeast Asia announcing the U.S. will donate 1 million more COVID-19 vaccine doses to Vietnam, which will bring the total from the U.S. to Vietnam to 6 million doses.
I should add that all of these deliveries are, in fact, donations, free of charge, with no strings attached. Because for us, this is about saving lives.
Vice President Harris also pausing for a moment of silence at a monument in Hanoi that marks the spot where the late U.S. Senator and former Navy pilot John McCain was shot down during the Vietnam War. The Vice President's visit to Hanoi, part of a broader tour of Southeast Asia, part of efforts to counter China's influence operations in the South China Sea. She repeated the U.S. position on that while in Vietnam.
Let me affirm that the United States Navy will maintain a strong presence in the South China Sea and will continue to challenge Beijing's bullying and excessive maritime claims.
Elsewhere in Southeast Asia, Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte says rumors are true that he plans to run for vice president in next year's elections. He says it's because he wants to continue the fight against violent criminality as a government official.
Then I will continue the crusade. I'm worried about the drugs, insurgency. Well, number one is insurgency, then criminality, drugs. I may not have the power to give the direction or guidance, but I can always express my views in public.
His critics say the move is an effort to sidestep constitutional limits that provide for just 1 6-year term as president in the Philippines. As for the top of the ticket next year, it's been widely speculated that Duterte's own daughter, Sarah, will run. She's currently a mayor and has signaled some opposition to the idea of her father being her running mate. Migrants seeking asylum in the U.S. by trying to enter via Mexico will have to wait again in Mexico while their cases are heard in U.S. courts. That after a 6-3 ruling by the U.S. Supreme Court this week upholding a lower court order for the Biden administration to reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy, which it ended and which was put into place by the Trump administration. The Supreme Court also stating that the Biden administration likely violated federal law in the way it tried to end the Trump-era policy. The 3 dissenting justices did not say why they dissented. Weeks of cleanup ahead for parts of Tennessee, ravaged by intense flooding last weekend. The most heavily affected area, Humphreys County, about an hour-and-a-half's drive west of Nashville, not far from the banks of the Tennessee River. 18 deaths blamed on the flooding so far. 3 people are still considered missing. More than 250 homes destroyed. Dozens more severely damaged. Schools there canceling classes for the rest of the week. A federal disaster declaration approved by President Biden. The president hosting new Israeli Prime Minister Naftali Bennett at the White House to talk about Mideast regional concerns, including what to do about growing tensions with Iran. The Biden administration has signaled an intent to return to the Iran nuclear deal, which was effectively scrapped by President Trump. Israel's new prime minister, just as opposed to the nuclear deal as his predecessor Benjamin Netanyahu was.
A nuclear agreement that has already expired it is no longer relevant, even according to those who once thought it was relevant.
It's Bennett's first overseas state visit since taking the reins of power from Netanyahu this summer. Also in Washington, House Democrats advancing their $3.5 trillion budget blueprint on a party line vote of 220 to 212.
Senate Concurrent Resolution 14 is considered as adopted.
That sets up a process known as reconciliation to align specifics of the House bill to the version already passed in the U.S. Senate. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi says she expects the reconciliation effort to be completed by the end of September.